जय हिंद दोस्तों, मैं हूं मेजर मोहम्मद अली शाह और आज शाम को बड़े इम्प्रॉम्प्टू मैं आपके साथ लाया हूं। मैं ये नहीं कहूंगा बेहद खास मेहमान, मैं ये कहूंगा कि मेरी जिंदगी में सबसे ज्यादा खास जो हो सकते थे पूरी जिंदगी में और आगे भी, तो मेरी जिंदगी के लिए सबसे ज्यादा खास इंटरव्यू ये होगा। जी हां, एक ऐसी शख्सियत जो कोई तारुफ की मोहताज नहीं है, who needs no introduction. I'm talking about 1971 war veteran, former diplomat, former deputy chief of the army, former member armed forces tribunal, former vice chancellor Aligarh Muslim University, currently the pro chancellor of the University of Science and Technology, Meghalaya, the author of the best-selling novel, The Sarkari Musalman, now then, Lieutenant General Zameer Uddin Shah Sahab. Jai Hind Sir.
Jai Hind.
Sir, thank you very much for taking your time on my request, sir. I am really, truly grateful and honored, sir. Such an honor. I would call it the biggest honor of my life, sir. Sir, let us begin by the boy who started his education from a madrasa, a small madrasa in a small village, went on to a convent school, one of the best schools in the country, Nainital, St. Joseph's College, Nainital, and thereafter went to the National Defence Academy, passed out as an appointment at the NDA and the IMA, got commissioned in the army, saw the action during the 1971 Indo-Pak War. So let us start by your experience in the army during the 1971 war, sir.
Well, my experience, I've written it all in my book. Mine was the Camel Pack Regiment. Just before the war, General Jacob decided that the camels were outdated and the regiment should be motorized. So we were motorized just in time and we moved to the concentration area in September 1971. There we were wondering what's going to happen. Are we going to go in for war or not? Till about 26th or 27th November, when General, later Field Marshal Sam Mannixhaw, flew in and addressed all the officers and left no doubt in anybody's mind that we were going in for an offensive to ensure that the liberation of Bangladesh does take place. And sure enough, I have written the whole account in my book, and we were very, very impressed by the poise and the confidence of the General Mannixhaw. We were all glued to his very, very short speech. And then he had a cup of tea in a mug and flew off. So my regiment was part of the offensive which was planned for Rahim Yar Khan. But on the night of 3rd, 4th December, the Pakistanis gave us a surprise and we found that they had built up opposite our post at Longewala. My regiment was switched to the Longewala axis and we built up on the battery of 1701 Field Regiment, which I subsequently commanded later on in life. So my regiment built up on this battery and we fired in support of the Longewala post. Next morning, for some reason, I think the tanks felt that the wire which we had laid around the post was a minefield, so they dithered and spent the night jockeying around the post, but they did not physically assault the post. Next morning, the hunters came in, and I think it was Pakistani 22 cavalry. They destroyed a large number of tanks. That turned the tide because, in case the Air Force had not saved the situation, these tanks were quite capable of rushing on to Jaisalmer. I think the objective was the airfield, and also go deeper into the Jaisalmer sector. So we were saved. We subsequently we advanced into Pakistan, and of course the progress was not very rapid because we were not mobile, not motorized, and it was very very heavy sand dunes, very which could not be negotiated with B vehicles, and we were making use of of improvised means to progress further. So we made some progress, not very much, about 12 or 13 kilometers, and then we spent the next 6 months in Pakistan till the ceasefire. So that was my experience. Yes, another incident which happened was, I think on the night of 4th or 5th of December, two khaki-clad figures entered our gun position with their hands up, and they said, "Don't shoot, we are Bengali officers." So we relieved them of their arms and sent them back to, and they fought with the Mukti Bahini. So that was my experience in 1971, and I'm very, very proud to be called a Longewala battle veteran.
So we are very proud of you, sir. The whole nation is so proud of you, to your services that you rendered to it in the army for 40 years and thereafter to the academic sector. We will come to that as well, sir. Sir, you've seen postings in Jammu Kashmir, in Chamjodia, in Leh Ladakh. Sir, but thereafter, you were also as a young officer, as a young brigade major in Nagaland, in a place called Chakabama. So would you like to share with us about how time was in the early 80s at that time when you were there in Chakabama, sir?
Yes, after my staff college, I was posted as the brigade major of 81 Mountain Brigade of 8 Mountain Div. And that time, insurgency was at the peak. Of course, the Nagas had split into two: the NSCN and the NFG, the Federals we call them. But they were constantly giving us trouble, ambushing our vehicles and convoys, and we were totally on guard. The brigade suffered a setback in 1984 when one of our posts, which was a platoon post at a place called Fekmile, was attacked and overrun by I think it was the Federals. The JCO, who was the platoon commander, had made the cardinal error of uh, collecting all the weapons. He was so overconfident that there would be no attack. He had collected all the weapons in the post, a thatched roof hut. The Nagas came surreptitiously at night, fired a rocket launcher at the coat, which went up in flames. So our men were without arms, and they were cut to pieces by Das, and that was a very severe setback which the brigade suffered. Anyway, I do recollect that the chief of army staff the next day visited the post. He was very annoyed, and the battalion which was there, I think it was 13 Jack Riff, which subsequently won two Paramveer Chakra. He gave the orders that the battalion would not be relieved from the operational area till they got three times the number of kills of the men they had lost. I think that was a very, very short sighted uh, message given by the chief because in insurgency, head counts don't matter. It is the once people get onto the warpath and start hunting heads, then things go wrong. So we don't have to go in for head counts. We should make sure that law and order is restored at the earliest so that the administration can be handed over to the civil administration. So I spent almost 2.5 years in the area. My brigade commander was Brigadier P.L. Kukreti, later Major General of the Rajput Regiment. And after the Facmile incident, we did conduct a trans-border operation into a village called Bakware, and we never talked about it, and I still won't. But we did what we had to, and then came back. Of course, it's all given in my book. So General Kukreti took the initiative of launching a trans-border operation to punish sections of the Naga hostiles who had attacked Fekmile. It was a wonderful tenure. The brigade, it was involved a lot of work because the brigade, besides three regular battalions, had two Assam rifle battalions and two BSF battalions. The BSF battalions were 99 BSF and 111 BSF. They comprised of surrendered underground who had come overground, and they had been put into two special battalions. They wore combat dress at that time in the 80s. They were the only ones who wore combat dress, and they were commanded by the chief of the Naga Federal Army, who we used to call chief. He was self-styled General K. Zoheto Su. He was made the commandant of 111 BSF. It was a very colorful outfit, very, very useful, and I made very, very good friends with generally the Sema Nagas who comprised the battalion. So that was my a few of the important things which I learned. Yes, Zoeto Zoo also had the distinction of knocking down an Indian Air Force Dakota. It
Oh,
was on a dropping mission at a post called Meluri when Zoeta Su and his gang of about 30 to 40 insurgents fired at the Dakota, which was flying low, riddled it with bullets, and the Dakota came down. The aircrew bailed out and were captured by the insurgents. So I asked Zoeto, he and I always had very, very interesting talks. I asked him, how long was the air crew your captive? And he told me that they were captive, they held them captive for about 6 months.
oh my
And I
God.
asked him, didn't they try and escape? Oh, he said they didn't try because we had deprived them of the shoes. And being without shoes, they could hardly walk. So there was no danger of them escaping. So Zoeto was a very seasoned underground and now a very, very useful commandant of the 111 BSF. I've always maintained that the best way to um, fight insurgency or to overcome insurgency is to declare an amnesty, recruit the insurgents into special battalion, and then use them to fight for us instead of fighting against us.
Very well said, sir. Very well said. Sir, you were also deployed at the Indo-Tibetan border, the very close to China, at the border in Tawang, in Kirmu, Tanga Valley, and your children went to school over there, the Indo-Tibet border. So, could you tell? You were a young major at that time. You were a battery commander. Tell us a bit about that, sir.
Yes, see, after my Nagaland tenure, I opted to go back to my regiment, although that entailed a field posting of about 4.5 years. And when I landed up in Tenga, which I thought would allow us to keep our families, I was told this is the house allotted to you on Chinde Top, but your location is not here. You move up to Tawang. So we moved up to Tawang, and there for 2 years, the regiment worked in high altitude area doing op construction. It was a terrible, uh, very, very tiring, fatiguing task. The sportsmen were also brought in, and after that, the regiment sports went haywire. We could never win any trophies because the sportsmen had been reduced to a labor force. So that's what we did. And I think the forward posture, I did visit the gun positions we had prepared in high altitude when I was deputy chief, and I found that they were still intact. It was a very good job done by the regiment. So all my time in uh, in the Eastern Division at Tawang was op construction. Of course, that did deter the Chinese from uh, taking liberties with us.
So, so you must have had confrontation with the Chinese army at that time. You must have been, they must have been a face off. You must have come face to face, like what happened in, like, it's very common nowadays at the China border because it's so porous. And at the Indo-Tibet border, like last year, when Colonel Babu was martyred, they had come, the Chinese army and the Indian army was face to face. So, did you experience similar situation anytime in your
No, I
time?
no, I never came. Although I went on several long range patrols, but that time these face to face encounters were very rare. I mean, we knew when the Chinese came, and they knew when our patrol went out. So we avoided meeting or any encounter with the Chinese. That unlike now, where things are very hot, and of course we know the incident that have taken place in Ladakh. It is the pressure tactics by the Chinese to keep us under pressure.
So, so you commanded a brigade in Manipur, in Kakchin, and that's covered under Thobal district, sir. It was a very tough tenure for you. Must have been at that time. Insurgency was on the boil. This was the late 90s, mid 90s, I would call it rather. And tell us your experience as a brigade commander commanding a brigade in the midst of insurgency in Manipur, sir.
Right. Again, I had a very large brigade. We had five battalions and Assam Rifle battalions, two Assam Rifle battalions, three Army, two Assam Rifles, and one BSF battalion. It was a hodgepodge of battalions, but the brigade did very well. And my thrust in insurgency area is concentrate purely on getting information. We did uh, deploy our sources, and we were very liberal in rewarding people who gave us information. So if the officers at the brigade did very well in counterinsurgency operations, both when we were in Kaching and later on when we deployed further. So it was a very challenging and difficult tenure.
So, so apart from the brigade in Manipur, you also went to command a division in Secunderabad, 54 Division. You came in General Cadre from artillery, you switched over to General Cadre and you commanded that division. But the moment you took over the division, just then, the December 13 attacks in the year 2001 happened. And of course, our entire nation was mobilized, the army was mobilized at the border. And of course, and 54 Division coming under strike court was moved towards the border in Rajasthan near Jodhpur, Agulai. So you were all set. I believe the army was all set to go in for the final attack into the neighboring country and also friendly neighborhood. And that about Op Parakram when you were deployed at the Indo-Pak border in the desert, sir. Of course, it may not have, you had a previous experience being in a camel pack regiment when you were a young officer in the deserts. And now once again reliving that life in the deserts. How was it, sir, now, as a general officer?
Yes, I had taken over the formation in Secunderabad, and I just spent 2 or 3 months in the station when Op Parakram was declared, and we mobilized and moved to Jodhpur sector. It was a difficult. We talk of cold start. My entire division could only concentrate in about 3 weeks' time because of lack of rolling stock and the other problems which we had. So there was no such thing as cold start. We deployed we concentrated near a village called Agulai, which is between Jodhpur and Jaisalmer, and remained there during the 10 months of Parakram. Of course, two brigades of my formation were airlifted in December 2002 to Ahmedabad to curb the rioting which had taken place after the train had been burnt, train of pilgrims. And I'm very, very proud of the fact that within uh, 48 hours of deployment all over Gujarat, the rioting had been curbed because of fair and prompt action by troops on the ground. I mean, they were not partisan, they didn't take sides, they shot anybody who was an arsonist, and within 48 hours, we had restored law and order and curbed rioting totally. So that is my experience of command of the 54 Div. Of course, after all this, we did return back for another 3 months. The tenures are very, very short, especially in the high ranks. And after 3 months, after uh, op- Parakram, we moved back to permanent location.
So, also apart from the Op Prakram, and then of course when your division was moved to Gujarat, I remember you had Major Shah at night from Jodhpur at about 11:30 at night, and early morning you gave her a call at about 5 a.m. the next day. After a few hours, that is practically after 6 hours, and you said that you were in Ahmedabad overnight. So how many of you were you? How did it all happen? So how were you mobilized overnight, and how did it all? How did you spring into action going there, sir, overnight?
Well, I got a call from the Chief of Army Staff on the evening of 2nd December, and he just gave me instructions. He says, I had served with him earlier as a Colonel GS in Punjab, 7 Div. He gave me the orders to move immediately uh, to Ahmedabad and um, put out the flames of hatred and rioting. I told him, sir, it'll take me 48 hours uh, to reach. He said, don't worry about that. The Air Force is going to lift you. And the whole night, the Air Force took 59 flights and we moved two brigades to Ahmedabad. And after the troops were deployed, as I said, we uh, curbed the rioting within 48 hours.
Right, sir. Sir, also you were the GOC 3 Corps, if I'm not mistaken. I am seeing the 3 Corps tie which you are wearing right now. You had commanded the Corps in Nagaland, in Dimapur. How was your experience while commanding the Corps in Dimapur, sir?
Oh, well, I'm wearing this three-corps tie for good effect to show to people that I had the honor of commanding three corps. I was in charge of all the northeast states, uh, and the corps had almost 60 assorted battalions, Assam Rifles, Army, BSF, uh, CRPF. Of course, the CRPF was not under command, but they were operating in Ireland. So, commanding uh, uh, a, a force of that magnitude and of such differing capabilities, such differing ethos, was very, very challenging task. Uh, of course, I had now the luxury of helicopter flight, so I didn't have to travel by road when I visited posts, but I did visit all of them over a period of time. And everywhere I went, I just had two things which I stressed. One was intelligence gathering. Intelligence gathering. Second was the ability of soldiers to shoot straight. I found this is a handicap in the Indian Army. Even our infantry soldiers do not shoot properly. They fire all over the place. And I had zeroed a AK 47. And whenever I visited a post, I would organize a shooting competition with the men. And let me tell you, invariably, I had the best score. Uh, and this was a lesson which drove home to the point that if the corps commander can shoot straight, why can't we? So, the of course, I uh, revived memories, old memories of and renewed relationship with K. Zoetosu, who was had now shifted to Dimapur. Remember the CEO of the 111 BSF, and a lot of other friends which I had cultivated during my tenure as a major. This was basically in the Angami area, in the Angami and just the Chakesang area, and this the in Kakching, which was a different tribe. So all these friends stood by me, and they were always very, very delighted. We did concentrate on operations, but I firmly believe that the way to curb insurgency is through winning hearts and minds. So we did not neglect the civic action programs. We built schools, we built football fields, we built roads. These were part of the civic action projects which we undertook during my tenure and which all corps commanders undertake when they are in command.
So, incidentally, the former Chief of the Army Staff, General Dalbir Singh Sohag, also commanded 3 Corps in Nagaland, the same corps which you command subsequently, and General Bipin Rawat, the current CDS, who was also Chief of the Army Staff. And also, interestingly, sir, which our audience should know, that when General Shah was commanding the corps in Nagaland, in Dimapur, his personal staff officer, that's the ADC, the aide de camp, there was an officer by the name of Captain Mohammed Ali Shah. That's me. At that time, I was a captain, and I was under General Shah's command. And I'm personal witness to this. That whenever we would go anywhere outstation, of course, we traveled in different helicopters for obvious reasons, because in the northeast and the weather over there. The commanding officer before the visit would always call me up, sir, as the ADC. Wait, what are the general's likes and dislikes? So I said, because like in the sense that what do you like to eat or drink or whatever, the Adam. I would say, sir, he's a ground soldier. Very simple. The general is he likes officers, especially commanding officers with who have a gun shot, who have a good shot, who are marksmen. Oh my god. And they would activate their firing range and they would start practicing. And I am personal witness to this. So once in Manipur, Colonel Raghvinder Singh Rathor's uncle was there, former soldier. He was there for a coaching camp. And we had a shooting competition. You said, okay, take out your hats, all of you. Now put in the highest note that you have for fun. And we all pitched in. Someone put in 100 rupees, someone 500, someone 1,000, someone whatever. And you said, okay, now whoever wins gets the hat. And at that time, there were young officers. I was there, and I consider myself to be a marksman, sir, because on my 11th birthday, I was gifted an air gun by my father. Incidentally, we'll come to that. Also, a soldier, the finest soldier, my ideal, my Superman.
Yes, Ali.
So I had been, and he had promised me. Pardon, sir, you said something?
Yes, when I needed an ADC, when I took over the corps, the commanding officer of our regiment, 170 Field Regiment, offered you as my ADC, and I couldn't discriminate against you, so I did select you. Of course, there were some misgivings in Army headquarters, but then I quoted that General MacArthur of the United States Army had been ADC to his father, and that ultimately won the argument, and you were posted. So I think you did a very fine job, Ali, and I must compliment you for being so upright and so meticulous in whatever you did. You made my job of co-commander much easier because you took care of all my needs and requirements.
Thank you, sir. Means a lot. Really, the biggest compliment I've ever received in my life, and actually I would say the second biggest, because till now the biggest compliment I ever received in my life was, "Oh, you look as handsome as General Shah." That was the biggest compliment I used to always feel. Okay, that's a compliment. Okay, now sir, coming to the incident in Manipur, I remember it was in Limakwang where the division headquarters were there. So we were on the firing range, and there were young officers. You were there, and we all had, whoever wins would get the co-commander's hat, would get the booty inside. Fine. I was very confident of winning. Well, I was a runner-up, but the winner was you, the co-commander. And but thereafter, what you did was something very, very generous and magnanimous. You gave the entire hat to a lady who was there. Incidentally, she was a Manipuri, she was a local. So you gave it to her. You said this is to encourage you. She also had a good shot, yes, but she had a good time. She said it's a good booty. So that was another great learning. I learned several things from you, sir, as serving as your ADC. And the best part is today, when you have given me this compliment publicly on this platform, it really means a lot, sir. It's made my day complete. So you revived your old friendships of when you were brigade major in Nagaland, again in Chakabama, when you were commanding a brigade in Manipur, your old, in fact, you had a brigade in Arunachal as well. So you revived your old connections from Northeast. How did they help you function better as a co-commander in three corps, sir?
See, all the old friends of mine, I never embarrassed them by asking them for information or anything like that. But they did spread the word around that you can trust the corps commander. He keeps his word, and he's a friend of the tribals. That was the message which they conveyed all over, and the local population in Nagaland, Manipur, Tripura, and other places did believe the old tribesmen who told them that the army could be trusted, and we kept our word. So they were very, very useful, uh, very, very helpful in, well, reassuring the tribals that the army meant no harm to them. They were only there to ensure that peace is maintained, and the army didn't want to bother them in their daily lives. It wanted to leave them alone. So these old contacts of mine were a great asset.
So after you, your predecessor was, in fact, your successor was Lieutenant General M.S. Dadwal, General Manbir Singh Dadwal, whose brother, unfortunately, we lost him a couple of months back. His brother, who was the police commissioner of Delhi, Mr. Y.S. Dadwal. Now, General Dadwal, I had the honor of serving under his command for a brief while as his ADC after you went to Delhi as the deputy chief of the army staff. So General Dadwal took over from you as a brigadier in PVSM. He took away from you as the GOC 3 Corps. He took over from you when you were the deputy chief of the army staff, and thereafter you also gave his name when you were a judge, a judicial member, an administrative member in the Armed Forces Tribunal, imparting justice to a lot of armed forces personnel. At that time, you had forwarded General Dadwal's name as well, sir. So how was it when a successor was succeeding you in so many appointments? Do you think it was easier for you to function since you had set up a base over there, which he took over thereafter, and when he was the deputy chief, very fine general, very, very fine general. He and Mrs. Dadwal, I have very, very fond memories of the entire family. So, how was it giving? First time you passed the baton on to him was in the PP Directorate, and thereafter there as the Deputy Chief.
Yes, General Dadwal and myself are very, very close friends. We had not met before in service, but it so happened that he took over from me in tricom and then took over from me as the Deputy Chief of Army Staff. He's a thorough professional, and I admire his capabilities, his professional acumen, his knowledge, and the way he conducts himself. So we still are close friends, and I am certain that whatever decision the military secretary branch had taken in well tying us down together was a very, very good move.
Sir, so thereafter, when you came deputy chief of the army staff, you traveled to different countries and you were in charge of procurement at that time. So, how was the tenure as the deputy chief of the army staff? A lot of responsibility. So, how was it?
Well, it was a you see the responsibilities were huge. I was in charge of the financial management and the modernization of the army. That is a pretty onerous task, very difficult. The major problem I faced was uh, trying to push for procurements of weapons and equipment. The Ministry
Sir,
of Defense, the Raksha Mantri, was very, very chary about sanctioning any expenditure. Uh, of course, he subsequently became the President of India. But as Raksha Mantri, he was a very difficult Raksha Mantri who was very, very sensitive to any expenses being incurred on anything, on procurements and everything. But all I would say is that the army has to expend money on modernizing. That should not be curbed. The army needs to be modernized and kept fit for uh, any situation. That is something which the Ministry of Defense has got to keep in mind and do and sanction funds to the army for modernization.
sir. So, thereafter, after you retired from the army, 31st August 2008, you were thereafter the chief of the army staff, General Deepak Kapoor, at that time. In fact, he was very keen. In fact, you were offered to go as a chairman ceasefire monitoring group in Nagaland because of your vast experience in the Northeast and handling and bringing peace. Because I remember very clearly you had mentioned wherever the locals, the tribals see us in uniform, they should not feel intimidated of us. They should always feel that the army is here to protect us. In fact, that after you finish your tenure as GOC 3 Corps, you sent me to Assam Rifles in Kohima, in Nagaland once again. This showed your attachment, your emotional attachment, and your love for Nagaland to for Northeast and particularly Nagaland, sir. So when you were offered to go as the chairman ceasefire monitoring group, I personally feel they couldn't have got a better man than you to actually bring peace in Nagaland, sir. But immediately after that, you got the appointment of being a member at the Armed Forces Tribunal. But sir, if you would have actually taken it up to in Nagaland as the chairman, because General Kulkarni was there before you, and he was there for I think good over almost 2 decades almost. So, what changes do you think you could have brought as the chairman ceasefire monitoring group had you taken over, sir?
See, the chairman ceasefire monitoring group has a very, very important task to make sure that the ceasefire is maintained and the negotiations with the Nagas proceeds without any hiccup or without any problems. uh, General Kulkarni, who was the chairman ceasefire monitoring group when I was commanding 3 Corps, briefed me on what was required. he had committed, he had publicly committed that there would be no violation of the ceasefire. It is a very, very important job. One thing which I can say with certain is that the chairman of the ceasefire monitoring group, the name is forwarded by army headquarters, but the insurgents have to approve the name. That means they should not have objections to it. Since the the underground knew my bona fides, since they knew about me, they did not raise any objections to my being appointed the chairman of the ceasefire monitoring group. If I had gone there, things would have been very interesting, and I am certain that because of the old contacts, we could have ensured that the ceasefire becomes permanent and there's a final solution to the Naga problem. That is something which I would have aimed for and would have surely succeeded in.
Sir, that's beautifully said. Sir, also taking you back slightly in the past before we move ahead, one very, very important point which you had, which was there in our mind, but I thought I'll come to it subsequently, sir. So you had served as a staff captain, which is closer than an ADC, to Lieutenant General JFR Jacob when he was the Eastern Army commander. And we all know as General Jacob, who was instrumental in the liberation of Bangladesh, in also getting peace over there, sir. He was instrumental in the surrender of over 93,000 Pakistani troops towards the Indian Army, sir. How was your tenure serving under the command of Lieutenant General JF? We addressed who we would incidentally, same regiment of artillery, who also, thanks to you when I was serving as your ADC, I had the honor of meeting him very, very closely. In fact, he was like a grandfather to me for that matter. And of course, I had the honor of meeting General Ayn Cardozo as well when he had visited you when you were co-commander. But let's come to your experience with General Jacob when you were his staff captain, sir.
Oh, General Jacob was a bit of, people had to understand him. He was extremely large hearted, he had wit, he had humor, and he was unpredictable. I mean, that's one thing which I learned from him, that senior generals, or why only senior generals, everybody should be unpredictable. Nobody should know what you're up to. If you're carrying out an inspection, do it by surprise. And he was highly capable. In fact, I think the real credit for the surrender of the Pakistani forces in Bangladesh should be attributed to General JBAR Jacob. He flew unarmed into Dhaka, met Niazi, and after spending about an hour, he decided to call the spade a spade and told the Pakistanis that if you don't surrender, uh, we will not be able to protect you from the Mukti Bahini who were paying for their blood. So the Pakistanis fell for this ruse. They didn't want to face the Mukti Bahini because of the atrocities they had committed earlier. So this was the real story of the surrender. That means uh, uh, it was a combined effort, which I always stress during the recent uh, discussions we had with senior Bangladesh officers and the Bangladesh ambassador. Their constant refrain and complaint was that we help the Indian Army in negotiations. We help them in giving proper reports and such things. So it is very, very essential that these people are rewarded and rewarded adequately and handsomely.
So also, again, go back in a bit behind and a bit ahead from here. So you were also in the early 90s as the Colonel General Staff Colonel JS of 7 Div in Firozpur in Punjab. At that time, the GOC was General Padmanabhan, who subsequently became the chief of the army staff, sir. So how was fighting insurgency? Because you have fought insurgency of all types in J&K, in the Northeast, in Punjab. You have seen action at the Indo-Pak border. So you have been a war veteran. So how was it fighting insurgency in Punjab in the 90s?
Oh, the insurgency in Punjab was very very different. You know, there's lack of cover. I mean, there are no jungles, but there are concrete jungles. So the Khargus, as the insurgents were called in Punjab, always took care to fight from built-up sections of the society. They were they knew that the insurgency would be short-lived, and it was totally different. The the there was no jungle, there was no cover, and in fact, uh, one of the lessons I learned is that the brigade should not preferably get involved in directly in counterinsurgency operations. We had the unfortunate incident of one of the brigade majors being shot. He was Major Norial of the Karwal Rifles, ex Special Forces, who his brigade commander, when they were passing, got an input that some insurgents were hiding in a tube well building. So the brigade commander, decided to take the law into his own hands and launch the offensive against the hostiles, and Norial was killed. So the brigade commander and higher organization, their job is to provide security to the organization. That is very, very important.
Sir. So, moving on further, you also are the recipient of the Param Vishesh Seva Medal. That's the highest honor, military honor to a service personnel. That's like they have. You also have got the Vishesh Seva Medal, and you've also got the Sena Medal. And incidentally, you also got a General Officer Commanding Commendation card, General Officer Chief's Commanding Commendation card in Nagaland as a major, which coincidentally I too as a major got this award with the Assam Rifles as a major in Nagaland. So let's talk about your when you got your competition card under General Kukreti, sir. That in Brigadier Kukreti, of course, one of the final generals. He and whose goodwill in Nagaland still lasts. I have seen people in Nagaland still talk about General Kukreti, General Shah, General Tadwal, General Kulkarni. Of course, he was the the chairman CFMG. So the goodwill still lasts. So let's talk about. I know you would be a little embarrassed to talk about your own honors and awards, but if I may embarrass you slightly, sir, let's talk about your GOC competition, GOC&C's competition card, your Sena medal, your Vishesh Sena medal, and your Param Vishesh Seva medal, sir.
See, one shouldn't blow his own trumpet. I think the my senior officers appreciated the work done by my formation, by my unit, and so these should spur us to achieving greater tasks. I mean, one should not rest on the laurels or the honors and awards one has got. My advice to all the listeners is that these are peripheral issues. Uh, don't become swollen headed if you get an award. It must inspire you to do even better than what you did beforehand. So really, don't take honors and awards far too seriously. Don't try and win honors and awards because you may end up getting harmed yourself. They will come in their own time, in their own way. So no need uh, to be extra careful or extra well assertive in finding uh, a particular place which you may have been given the task to go and search.
Well said, sir. Very well said. But since you are not comfortable, I would like to tell our viewers that General Shah had got the GOC in Chief's commendation card in Nagaland and Chakabama. He had got the Vishesh Sena Seva Medal as a brigade commander in Manipur. He had got the Sena Medal for controlling the riots in Gujarat when he was there. He had got the Param Vishesh Seva Medal as the deputy chief of the army staff. So one more important thing, sir. So you have practiced martial arts in a way in the army, being in the Indo-Pak border, being in the front, safeguarding our national frontiers. You have practiced the martial arts that way. Your younger brother, Mr. Nasiruddin Shah, has practiced the fine arts. In fact, in your book, the second chapter you have dedicated in your book, The Sarkari Musalman, the second chapter you have dedicated to your brother, Mr. Nasiruddin Shah, and so has he dedicated his second chapter to you, the boy from Sardhana. And you have mentioned about the living in the shadows of a celebrity brother. When you were commanding the regiment in Allahabad, at that time, your younger brother, who you very fondly and affectionately call as your baby brother, had come over to Allahabad to perform a play for the regiment. So, but you often are, and you have written this article at that time, living in the shadow of a celebrity brother. The questions asked frequently to you: is he your real brother? And the answer is no, artificial or something like that. So, how is it? How is the feeling being a national hero, a real life hero, and he being a real life hero? And both have been my idols in life. So, you have achieved a lot in life. Your standing is something exemplary. But yet, at the same time, you are known as Nasir Saab's brother, large chunk of people as well. How is the feeling, sir?
Well, it doesn't bother me because being called Nazir's brother, although I'm elder, because I think he's the best actor in the country and he knows his craft. I think he's a very versatile actor. He feels the same about me. He feels that I've uh, influenced a lot of what he does in life. So that's we are personally we are very very close friends. We swim, we play tennis together, and we have got common interests. So Nasir is a good brother. He speaks his mind. He doesn't hesitate to point out a particular thing. For example, he pointed out about the test captain, the Indian captain. He says he may be a good cricket or maybe a good batsman, but he's also the worst. Well, uh, he is well. What do I say? He is the worst sportsman. Of course, that created a furor and a storm. But I think what Nasir said was very, very right. Cricket is a game of gentlemen, and I think that it should be spared these psychological warfare moves.
Sir, very well said, sir. So now you practice the martial arts, your brother practices the fine arts. Now let's come to the peaceful aspect of it, sir. You were chosen and you were handpicked and you were sent as an Indian diplomat to South, the Indian defense attache, not just a military attache where you would represent the army only, or the military only, but the defense attache, which meant you would also represent the Air Force, Navy, and Army, not just to Saudi Arabia, but to Kuwait and to Yemen as well, sir. And that time, the Indian ambassador to Saudi Arabia was Mr. Hamid Ansari, the former vice president of India. So, how was your tenure as the Indian defense attache representing India at an international level in Saudi Arabia, sir?
Oh, well, it was a very, very uh, interesting tenure. And defense attaches are normally an appointment as a defense attache is really a reward for your previous services. It gave me a chance to understand the working of the Ministry of External Affairs and Foreign Service officers. And of course, um, I made a lot of good friends internationally because Riyadh was a huge station with multiple nationalities. Um, it was undoubtedly a very, very fine tenure. And the person who relieved me subsequently uh, uh, also had a very, very challenging tenure. The big advantage of being posted as a defense attaché is your chance to tour the world. I mean, I saw many, many countries. I went to most of the continents because of my appointment as a defense attaché. So that compensated for of lack of facilities and other things when one is abroad, especially in Saudi Arabia. It was a very restrictive regime. The social aspects were totally nil, almost, I would say. But despite it all, I made good friends. One could do service for the country, and of course, in return, the services were bound to pay back the this dissolution. They should pay back the trust which the country has reposed in you. It is a very, very challenging tenure, and I'm certain that if people work hard, yes, one of the things that helps in selection of a defense attaché is knowledge of a foreign language. And I knew a sprinkling of Arabic, and since I'd served in a camel regiment, I was sent to Saudi Arabia.
Okay, sir, all right. And also, did you know Arabic? Did you learn Arabic before going there? Or how was it, sir? Your brush
Well,
with
you
the
see,
Arabic
as
language?
a child, I'd studied the Quran, uh,
Right.
and they give you before you proceed on a posting as a defense attaché, they send you on a crash course of 2 to 3 months of the language which you're going to use. So I could speak a sprinkling of Arabic. I could generally read the headlines of the newspapers. So it's the knowledge of the language in the country in which you live is vital for a defense attaché. And I found that this is one aspect where we don't give sufficient importance. Uh, the defense attaches of America and UK had already spent 3 or 4 years in universities in Egypt, and so they were well equipped to to use the full aspect of knowledge of a foreign language.
So, sir, you have an elder brother as well who lives in Egypt, partly in Egypt, partly in India, in Bangalore. And all three of you, when you were in school, your father gave you the best education. That's the best gift any parent can give to their children. In fact, that is what you passed on to your children as well. So your eldest brother, who's an IETN, who was the managing director, a very big man abroad in Mauritius, in Egypt, in different countries. So what is your relationship with with Nasir Saab? We know, and now with your eldest brother who lives abroad, who is married to an Egyptian son.
Right. My relationship with my brothers has been very, very warm, cordial. But we gelled very well on the sports field. For example, with Nasir, it was swimming and tennis. And fortunately, with Zahir, it is both of us love the game of golf. So that is why we make frequent visits to each other's homes, basically to renew our warm relationship and also to play golf. Games are a big bonding factor. Anyway, that's why in the army we give a lot of stress to games, and in families also, where the family members play together. It can be any game. The process of bonding uh, works very well and helps in the relationship.
Sir, sir, you are a man of few words. You had told me in the beginning only, don't keep it more than 18 minutes. Like in a TEDx talk, you keep it about 18 minutes, so keep it about 18, maximum 20. And look at that now, time, it's been an hour and there's still more to chat with you. We are just warming up at the moment. Now, please pardon me, sir, because there's so much to learn from your illustrious journey. Sir, let's come to your retirement. After you retired from the army, you went as a judge in the Armed Forces Tribunal, imparting justice. And I have personally seen that when you were the deputy chief of the army staff, you used to come home with early used to come with a briefcase. But earlier, then as the deputy chief, you started coming with suitcases. But then when you came as a member in the Armed Forces Tribunal, you had a black trunk with files. You used to actually come with cases in the files. So you mean to say, were there that many cases pending that you decided to go on a fast track? Because General Milind Naidu, who was the former vice chief of the army staff, right now in Bhopal, he his wife, Mr. Niharika Naidu, they were there. They're very, very close family friends. So I've seen him and General Dhillon, of course. The three of you were there at the principal bench in Delhi. How was your experience at the Armed Forces Tribunal and how hectic, how workloaded were you, sir?
Oh, it was a very, very hectic tenure. Since the Armed Forces Tribunal was raised to reduce the backlog of cases pending in various high courts of the country. And I'm very, very proud of the fact that during the 2.5 years I served, till I resigned, we had settled thousands if, of cases. Uh, Special relief was given uh, to personnel in financial matters, wherever the person had not got his entitlement. We always give relief. Of course, there were other things, but one or two things we never gave any relief, and that was cases of cowardice. We never gave any relief because we felt that the commanding officer was the best person to know which person had been a coward or not. So the very fact that uh, the the number of files with the lawyers got considerably reduced because where cases used to drag on for 15, sometimes 20 years, we got them resolved in 5 to 7 years. So this is a wonderful experiment, and I think the army should preserve this system to take care of its pets.
Sir, sir, and you did a very fine job in imparting justice to the armed forces personnel. Thereafter, you went as the vice chancellor of the Aligarh Muslim University, a very, very crucial tenure and a very, very crucial time of your life. So, how was your experience as the vice chancellor of Aligarh Muslim University? And I am told that any vice chancellor who's gone there, he has thought 10 times. It's going to be a troubled time. It's going to be a very, very difficult time. But yet, you managed to bring Aligarh Muslim University. You had taken an oath, like the way we take an oath in the army when we get commissioned. Similarly, you taken an oath when you went to Aligarh Muslim University. And I remember this, the speech is there on record, is there on YouTube, when you said that अलीगढ़ मुस्लिम यूनिवर्सिटी को हम नंबर 1 कंट्री इन इंडिया बनाएंगे और क्राउड ने बोला it will be in the world. And sir, at the end of your 5 years, the words you had spoken actually came true. The Times Higher Education ranking, which is considered to be the most credible ranking in the world, granted Aligarh Muslim University the status of the number 1 university in India. So let's talk about from the time you took over AMU. You were to go to AMU earlier in the year 2007 when you were the deputy chief of the army staff, and but you didn't go there at that time. 5 years later, once again you went there. So how was it now when you took over the reins of AMU? And also, mind you, The retirement age of vice chancellor was 65 years at that time, and you were just in the border. Just then, a ruling came from the government, sir, that the retirement age of central university vice chancellors have become 70, and that fitted you very well. That fitted you in the right spot. So a lot of people speculate that it was done to accommodate you. That we'll come to that as well. Let's take your views on that. Let's see how your experience was as the vice chancellor of the prestigious Aligarh Muslim University, sir.
The most challenging assignment I've ever had was the Vice Chancellorship of Aligarh Muslim University with 30,000 rebellious youngsters, both male and female. We had made sure that we lay down our aims and objectives, and that was to be the best university of the country, and we did achieve it in the academic year 2016-17. The main problem of the universities, as I see it, is lack of discipline. If we can ensure proper discipline amongst the students, the non-teaching staff, and other barristers and other people who aspire to be there, aspire to be in the university court and other things. It is the nothing is difficult. We ensured proper team play, and because of that, we earned flying colors during NAC inspection. We were declared the masters. We were well. Aligarh Muslim University became a university of choice and not a university of the last resort. So it was something which I'm very, very proud of. The education of the deprived sections of the population is very near to my heart, and we toiled tirelessly in that direction.
Sir. Sir, and of course, you would have faced a lot of opposition as well. Because anybody who wants to do good work, there would be people trying to pull you down. The Indian crab mentality is, of course, there. There will be a lot of people supporting you, a lot of people trying to pull you down, and there would be a lot of people who would be writing against you. There was a Hindi film, and that Abhishek Bachchan plays the role of Ambani. In that, there is a line which says, "Guru." The film name is Guru. जब लोग तुम्हारे बारे में लिखने लगे तो समझो तरक्की कर रहे हो. So a lot was written about you when you were vice chancellor of AMU, good and bad. Good, of course, we all know how to handle it. When people would actually slander you or they would write negative about you, how would you handle that, sir?
Uh, you have to take criticism sportingly. My belief is that if you try and work uh, to improve matters, you'll always be criticized. So that should not deter you. You must just move on, work hard, and what is important in universities is firstly teamwork, secondly is discipline, both among the students and the academic community. If that is maintained, then it will lead to better academic performance, better research, and the rankings of the university certainly improves with these factors once they are won.
So let's talk about. So you had, pardon me for bringing this up, but you had actually dared. Not, I would not say dared. You would actually know vice chancellor actually has done it. That's why I am the history of the Aligarh Muslim University vice chancellor lodge has the vice chancellor has the VC lodge also has been burnt by rebellious students. As you said, they have actually come and burned the vice chancellor lodge not at your time but earlier. So you had rusticated the president of the Aligarh Muslim University Students Union. So how was the reaction? I mean, what did you think? Did you think it would probably lead to a lot of protest? What happened, sir?
No, the rustication of the president of the Students' Union was something which had to be done. He was an indisciplined fellow who was taking advantage of the circumstances of the uh, uh, of the academy, and that is why I had to rusticate and expel him. But that did send a clear message to the university students: don't meddle with this vice chancellor. He has thrown out the secretary of the student union, and that was about all. It did help in curbing indiscipline. When you have to address a problem, I like to handle it from top down. Attack the top first, and then the coming down is easier rather than attacking the bottom and then climbing up. This is one of the techniques I learned, and it is very, very effective.
Yes, sir. So there's a saying that if you cross the Brahmaputra River once, you keep going there and it doesn't leave you. Northeast doesn't leave you 7 times. Right now, you are the pro chancellor of the University of Science and Technology, Meghalaya, which is again in Shillong in the Northeast. So once again, which means Northeast has not left you even till now. So how true is that saying that if you cross the Brahmaputra River once, it doesn't leave you thereafter?
Well, my tenures in the Northeast kept repeating, but I love that area. I am very very attached to the uh, persons of that area, so it didn't really bother me going across the Brahmaputra 7 times. It really doesn't matter. So you can be miserable even in paradise. The Northeast is a beautiful region, and I would advise all listeners that if you get an opportunity, do visit the Northeast. You'll realize how good the people are and how beautiful the countryside is. Okay, Ali, I think I have an appointment,
Right,
so you
sir?
can ask me
There was
one more question, and
Okay,
then
sir.
we
Before we leave, sir,
close.
the very important question, in fact, the highlight is, sir, you've written this book, The Sarkari Musalman, which came under a lot of flack for unnecessary reasons. There was every single media channel which had prime time debates, which were covering it. They were only going by the heading. They had not opened the content. In fact, my army friends who have read this book, they have said General Shah has actually spoken about patriotism, about the feeling of being Indian, the feeling of joining the army. So I would suggest all our viewers or our readers to please share it and talk about the Sarkari Musalman. There has been a there was a very very big misconception. So what do you have to say for a book which you wrote with good intentions, which was misunderstood? Only when people actually come to read it, they realize that no, General Shah has spoken so much of sense. Whatever he's spoken, it's his autobiography. It is his life journey. So, what do you have to say about the controversy that erupted unnecessarily over the Sarkari Musliman, sir?
Yes, people misunderstood. They had not read the book and they felt that it had a lot of communal content, which it doesn't. I don't dabble in communalism or in with jingoism. The Sarkari Musalman is a sobriquet given to Indian Muslims uh, when they don't pander to the illegitimate demands of their own community. When they don't do that, they are termed as Sarkari Musalman or Muslim stooge. So I've written all about it. I've written the introduction uh, explains why I chose this very, very peculiar topic heading. And I think my publisher totally backed me in choosing it, and the book has done very well. I would advise all soldiers, especially all administrators, to read the lessons given in that book. There's a huge pile of notes which I got together to publish in the book, and you will. I can assure you that you will find this book extremely interesting.
Sir, the way you have covered every aspect in this book is beautiful, especially the fifth chapter, particularly insurgency in Northeast India, reminiscences, page number 76, where you have spoken fondly about your memories in the Northeast in Nagaland. So, last question before I let you go, sir. So, what do you think? Because there have been a lot of questions over here by a lot of our viewers. I will just Jai Hind, sir. Someone writes, Gopi C is my coursemate. Proud of you, Ali. Good to see you both. Gopi, you're a dear friend. Thank you. Madhav Singh Jarial is an army aspirant. Hello, sir. Jai Hind. Suraya Bhatt is part of my online public speaking academy. So, I opened as online public speaking academy. And she's from Kashmir. She is a very fine speaker and a teacher. Niaz, Jai Hind, sir. Thank you, Niaz. Nishant Verma. Nishant Verma, General sir, with a condition yesterday. He is one. He has a lot of questions. We'll come to his question. He want to know about Armed Forces Special Power Act before we let you go, sir. Before Arun Sen, say then Life are like sun, VS, nice to see father and son Deo, Mohammed Faizan, Jain Ali sir, Jain sir, Sadagdu, Rhino Charge sir, Nishant Verma Cutter, then Tahid Khan, then Nishant Verma Numan Ahmad, Mukesh Bhatnagar. Mukesh Bhatnagar is is a senior of mine, sir, very respected personality. So Nishant Verma's question is, so let's talk about Armed Forces Special Power Act, which is much in talk right now. There has been a lot of talk, especially in Nagaland. There are people who want to repeal it. Do you think? What is your view on Armed Forces Special Power Act, or whatever you like to say? And we can conclude on that, sir.
See, the Armed Forces Special Powers Act was enacted in 1958 to take care of problems in areas which were disturbed areas, and it gives protection to armed forces personnel from uh, well action they take for acts which they've done in the course of duty. It is There's a lot of debate, there's a lot of demand to the government uh, that the act be made non-applicable. But I think that would be a colossal blunder. This act, shields, gives a shield to persons of the army and the paramilitary forces from undergoing the mortification of action against them by civil courts. It is absolutely essential that people are not subjected to a lifelong of courts, and that is why I've been stressing that the armed forces tribunals must take care of various aspects, especially social aspects. It is very essential that see, the Armed Forces Special Powers Act is not a license to do as you please. People, even though they have liberty to search, to arrest, and to shoot at people who are escaping, evading arrest, it is by no means a method of taking control over certain state of population. It is. I've just written an article on India Today on the Armed Forces Special Powers Act. I feel that soldiers are doing very important tasks, and they should make sure that the provisions of the Armed Forces Special Powers Act are not misused. It's very easy to misuse them, but seasoned shoulder, seasoned soldiers realize that they would be hamstrung in case the Armed Forces Special Powers Act is removed and they are left at the mercy of the wolves.
Sir, sir, thank you so much. Thank you so much for your taking out time and related to you, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing your insights. I would not hold you back because I'm well aware that you have an interview with the television channel in the next couple of minutes. I will just help you log into that. Thank you very much, sir. Jai Hind, sir.
Okay, Jai Hind Ali, and keep up the good work. God bless you.
Thank you, sir.